$27,000 offset your debt service tax levy, but then you would have a hole in your general tax levy that you would raise by 327. So both the special assessments are offsetting your tax levy, whether it's your general tax levy, which we account for in our operating tax levy, or you could say, oh, we'll use it to offset our debt and not have that debt service tax levy. We'll reduce it by that much, but then you would have a hole to fill in your budget on your general operating side.
So how will that play out then if we're talking about, from what I remember in the transportation utility, we're talking about a 1.5 million in transportation utility, or to cover for what we were talking about was the debt, and then roughly $500,000 in special assessments. We're going to shoot for like $2 million a year in transportation utility. Right now we're at $2,627,000, roughly. So how does that play in?
Well, this year it's, the for street construction is 2.3, but a lot of that is attributed to the Jackson Street project, which doesn't happen on an annual basis. Normally, our street and some storm sewer construction is right around that $1.5 to $2 million, but because we had this Jackson Street project, which is it's a urban street, or what is that called? It's a state. We kind of did it for East Grand, where every once in a while we qualify for those, and then the state picks up a portion of that, but those aren't annual projects. So this is kind of more of a non-annual, bigger project that got accounted for in this year's budget, but next year we wouldn't have that project. We'd probably return to our norm of our annual borrowing between $1.5 and $2 million.
So that's kind of what we're going to shoot for, is the $1.5 to $2 million. I mean, it's got to be pretty consistent, though. I don't think we can go up and down, but probably $2 million is what we're going to shoot for, unless we decide to keep it lower.
Right, and and like I said, you might have a special project or a bigger project that sporadically will, from one year might come up, like we had with the Jackson Street. But I've always, I kind of do my projections on debt whenever I kind of look out, and every year I kind of look at a debt projection to see where we are if we borrow this, and right now, I'm accounting for $2 million, when I project out our debt, And so if we go from this point forward and just borrow for our annual street construction, right now we're at, $29.6 million of general obligation debt. If we just borrow for street construction projects of $2 million going out in the future, that's going to reduce down in the future to $11.9 million, because we're only borrowing that $2 million, but then we're going to be paying off a lot of the debt we issued for the Aquatic Center, East Riverbank, Fire Station, things like that. And that's why that debt will be coming down if you just borrow for your annual street construction.
So if I say this, and maybe this is just the way my head works, and I know I've mentioned this to you before, but doesn't that, a different way of looking at that, isn't it saying we're $2 million over budget? Like we don't have the $2 million that we should or could have for the roads, and therefore we have to borrow for them or create this utility for them?
Well, I mean, you can look at that in a variety of different ways, but from a municipal budget, when you look at the accounting side for when you issue debt, as opposed to when you look at, the commercial side of accounting, when in government, when you issue debt, it's recognized as a revenue. That's how you fund some expenditures. And so when you issue debt, you don't necessarily record the liability, you record the revenue, and then in future budgets, you record the principal and debt payments as part of your debt service tax levy. So, over the years, it's been the practice here in Wisconsin Rapids for our street construction, ever since I've been here, that, they've issued debt, or we've issued debt, I shouldn't say that, we've issued debt to fund some of those street construction projects, along with other projects, obviously, like Centralia, Aquatics, East Riverbank. And so that's recognized as a revenue source to offset those expenditures and pay for those expenditures. And then in subsequent years, over the life of those notes or bonds, you budget the debt service, the principal and interest payments to pay that down.
So we see the debt itself that's coming in as income, and then we see the payments on it that we're paying, the principal or interest on it, as expenditures.
Right. I mean, you're recognizing the actual construction cost as expenditure and the actual debt proceeds as revenue. It's governmental accounting. It's a little bit different. And then obviously in subsequent years, when you pay for that debt service, you're recognizing that expenditure for the debt, the principal and interest, and then you're offsetting it with your debt service tax, property tax levy. So that's kind of how it works in the budget world. And
So this is the way we've been doing it since before you were here, except for when a group of people like us sit and we decide we want to do a lot of big special projects, and all of a sudden we're almost 50% in the debt comfortability level. Normally, if we're just doing roads, we're in this comfort zone of we're not in trouble, but right now we're kind of in trouble.
When it comes to debt and what you issue debt for, the projects, all comes with, what you're willing to pay for. Because obviously when you issue debt, yeah, you're paying for that facility, but obviously it comes at, down the road, you have to levy the property taxes to pay for the principal and interest payments. From a practice of paying for our street construction, when you look at our $29 million of general obligation debt outstanding, only 25% of that is attributed to actual street construction projects. The rest of it is for, the aquatics, East Riverbank. We did refinance some electric revenue bonds for the water and light. That was the tune of, that's about $4.6 million that, they reimburse us for that, but that's part of that $29.6 million of outstanding debt. We refinanced the unfunded pension liability back in 2003, the Centralia Center. So, when you really look at what we borrow or what we issue debt for street construction, it's not what's driving, it's not what's accomplished. It's only accounting for 25% of that $29 million. So I feel comfortable, for street construction projects that, with the practice that we've had, it's not driving our debt. Like I said, if we weren't to borrow anything but for streets, that debt would come down from 29 million to 11 million over the life of it back out to 2040. Obviously, as we pay off those 20-year bonds, that debt will be coming down, with the caveat that we're not issuing debt for any other purpose.
So if we were able to chunk away, say, $1 million in bigger expenditures that we're paying out there, and then, because we're talking about a $40 million budget with a $2 million, I understand it's probably not the right term for it, but we're over by $2 million. That's a 5% deficit, basically. So if we could chunk away the $1 million and then cut the department budgets by 2.5% across the board, would we have the $2 million to be able to fund the streets without taking out debt or starting a transportation?
I mean, when you look at the $40 million budget, it isn't all, some of it's like transfers from funds, because the thing with governmental accounting, you have various funds. And a lot of that is transfers from fund to fund that's recorded as a revenue in one fund and expenditure in the other. You have the debt service, which accounts for that, which you can't cut. So, when you look at a $40 million budget, it's a little misleading because there is some, crossover and duplication of the revenues and expenses because of how the funds interact with each other.
And so you're saying there's some things that can't be changed, but there's some things that could be changed?
Well, right. When you talk about across the board, cuts to budgets, it's like, yeah, there's things that, we're legally obligated to do that, or, you're not going to get it. It's not as simple as just saying reduce every budget by this amount or whatever. It's just like, because every operating budget isn't the same. Some budgets are funded by other revenue sources, not necessarily what we'd be talking about with, the tax levy or the bond proceeds. They could be funded with, utility fees, of which you're not going to take from a utility to pay for something that's not meant for that utility fee to fund. So it's not as easy as just kind of across the board. You really have to kind of dive into it and look at it and saying, okay, of the budgeted funds that are supported by, debt issue or tax levy or funds that aren't designated for a specific purpose, which one of those are discretionary and which ones are like, yeah, we have to pay those. We can't cut those because we're not in the position to do so. Does that make sense?
It does. I guess I go back to what I'm hearing is some aren't negotiable. Some of the stuff is negotiable, and we wonder if we can find the 2.5% in there, if we could find another $1 million in the budget somewhere.
Right. I know a number of years ago, and Tom and I've alluded to this, you may remember this, that, you know, as a council, as a city, we looked at, you know, hey, you know, instead of borrowing each year, you know, could we like, you know, eliminate that borrowing by maybe increasing the tax levy or doing this or cutting some of the discretionary funds? And we looked at it, but the decision was made that, you know, they didn't want to raise the tax levy because you know, the thing is taxes, you put it on the tax levy, but you have existing debt you still have to pay, so your tax levy tends to spike before it comes down. Also, we looked at, you know, some of the depreciation funds and some of the, you know, that we're putting away for future purchases, but then you get into things like you cut those, but then when those needs arise, now what do you do? So we have looked at it, and, you know, and I'm not saying that we can't look at it, but, you know, I think it's something that we would take and say, you know, would I say recommend like this budget? But if it's something that this council is uncomfortable with, the amount we're borrowing for street construction, you know, I think we can start looking at some of this stuff and saying, you know, obviously the transportation utility is one option, but you know, if it's looking at saying, okay, where do we have our discretionary fund expenditures in the budget, and looking at those and maybe reducing that amount, that's certainly something that we can look at over the next year.
I appreciate everything. I have one last question. What are the safeguards that are in place in case you get less than responsible people on the city council that want to keep borrowing and keep borrowing? Like, what safeguards do we have? Because I got on the board with my mindset saying I'm going to help alleviate some of the debt, and I had to make a motion pretty quick in there to go ahead and take out 1.9 million or $4.789 million in debt. So it kind of just keeps going now at this point. I don't see a way out, I guess.
Right. You know, the safeguards is we have a debt policy that says that we will not exceed 65% of our statutory limitation. The state of Wisconsin says that you can't borrow more than 5% of your equalized value. And, you know, right now we're at 48% of that. So theoretically, we could double our debt as we have now and still be under that statutory limit. But we have a council adopted policy that we won't exceed 65%. You know, but the thing is, it's not that that policy can't be changed. I mean, the safeguard is the people in this room, and yes, you know, everyone, you know, as you change over councils and stuff, you inherit what previous administrations and councils did. But you know, going forward, it's, you know, it's really what's comfortable with what the decisions are made at the time for those projects, and you know, also, you know, it's obviously if you know there's a limit to maybe what, you know, taxpayers are willing to share in that burden of the debt service as it goes up. And obviously that's communicated to all the persons. You know, you have elections and things like that that are safeguards. But, you know, other than the state statutory limit, you know, there is no like safeguard that would prevent us from doing that. I should say there's another one out there, obviously, with, you know, each year we get a credit rating from Moody's, and they look at that, our outstanding debt. And they look at, you know, where we look at our credit rating. Now, not saying that they wouldn't allow us to borrow, but obviously if we continued to borrow and our debt escalated, our credit rating would drop. And obviously that would be a warning sign to the council and to the taxpayers that maybe we're, you know, exceeding what is, you know, for our, you know, credit profile. So there's a lot of things out there that kind of gauge what you do, but it really comes down to, you know, what the council at the time, the alderpersons, and the public are comfortable with doing and what the project is.
I appreciate your time, and I appreciate all the work that you've done to put into this budget. I know it's a tough job, so thank you for that. Do you happen to know what the credit rating is right now? You don't if you don't know, it's
we're a AA3, and it's a very good credit rating for the city. A lot of times, I think our credit rating would be a little bit higher but our dependency on the paper mill being such a large part of our tax base has always been cited in our credit rating, and you know, and that's kind of kept it down. But we have a very good credit rating right now.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay, good.
And getting back, note for Tim, if the transportation utility would go through, I'm looking at an email that you sent out on September 4th, that the projected debt service with the transportation utility for the property taxes, eventually, if that utility has money to replace those, we don't need to borrow so much, and property taxes
Right.
would go down, the tax levy would go down. So that's another instance where,
Right.
we could start, the money that we would have could be paying down more debt, and it just keeps going down from there.
Absolutely. In that analysis that I did when we were talking about the transportation utility, and that's why I mentioned it's one of the options that if you have a fee that obviously would pay for street construction as opposed to issuing debt, you then over time, you'd start paying off your existing debt, you wouldn't have to borrow more, and your debt service tax levy would drop. And basically the savings to the taxpayers would be that you avoid all the interest costs on all those street construction or those debt issues that would fund street plus any of the issuance costs.
Tim, do you know the average of what that would be yearly? What does it roughly cost us on issuance cost, and roughly what do we pay for interest? Probably caught you off guard.
I know, I'm like,
But I agree, I still think any money saved is a very good thing for our taxpayers. But there's still the shift from borrowing to utility costs, but that amount of savings would be a direct savings.
right, I mean, you're still going to be, whether it's through a tax or a fee, you're still having to pay for the construction costs. What you're avoiding is the debt issuance costs and obviously the interest on those notes or bonds over the life of them. So that's where the savings comes down, and that's where those savings in that drop in that debt service tax rate help offset the amount of that fee.
And another thing I just wanted to mention, which Tim kind of hit on, that, yes, we all want to be fiscally responsible and not borrow, over what we need. But sometimes when you're like, okay, we're going to eliminate, we're going to cut $2 million out of the budget, no matter how, and you're not doing certain projects that need to be done, and, we'll save here, save here, save here. Like Tom, when I was looking back in the meeting minutes from how long ago you talked about a street project, that was back in 2015, and we're still in the same situation that we were before, but it's like, sometimes you just need, I look at it as fixing your house, you just keep, oh no, we'll just wait, and all of a sudden, now what am I going to do? So you have to be, I think, fiscally responsible in keeping up with work that should be done as well, so.
Patrick or Dean, do you have anything? Okay.
I'll talk if you want to listen.
Go for it.
The way this whole review process has gone has definitely been eye-opening. On Tuesday, it was the first time that we got to see what the actual income is going to be, or projected income. And I don't know how other cities do this. I know how businesses do it, and businesses don't do it this way. I just find that right at the last minute getting an email on, okay, this is what we're going to go over tonight. I don't like that. This is something obviously that's been worked on. But just because somebody put a lot of time and effort into something doesn't mean that they've necessarily done a good job. So, don't know what you guys want to do tonight with this. I know we're close. From my calculations, it seems like we're about 5% over every year, and I just don't think that's acceptable. That's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'd just like to, the email that was received Tuesday was just an updated document for the revenues and expenditures. There was one that was issued early October. I don't know what the date on it was, but I think it was October 8th. Well, there's-
Did you catch that, Patrick?
And yeah, I'm looking that up right now.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm just curious, like, I don't know if I want to make a motion or not. I guess I'm curious to know everybody else, if you care to share anyways, about like carrying on more debt or trying to bring us in line with what we're actually making revenue-wise. Like, I guess I totally understand what you're saying about your house, but when I have projects, I save for them. I know it's the more later years now that we take out debt for everything, but I don't think that that's healthy. I think we want to, I think there's probably more bankruptcies, personal bankruptcies and that, because we're not saving for the stuff that we know is coming. Like, I think we really, as a city, need to have a capital improvements, and I know we've talked about it, so that we know when things are coming. And I know I've talked with Tim about it too, and it's not easy to say, we know the fire station is going to need improvements in at least 25 years, if not more. Can we have something set there? Or are we always going to just live on the edge, and when something has to be, all of a sudden something's an emergency, then we take from everything else in order to fund for that? And, is there a way of getting us to a position where we have some stability and we have some of that in advance? And again, I understand why the utility is such a draw. I mean, it'd be great to have, take the $2 million, we wipe out our debt, we're just taking more from the people who are paying, flipping the bill, basically. The taxpayers, we're taking more from the people, and I understand that, and I know that it's a intriguing way to look at it. Switch it from taxes to fees, and then do the lingo in order to make it all work, the legalities of it. But the reality is, we're still, we're going after more money than we have. And I guess I'm just curious, because I don't want to, necessarily make a motion if the overall consensus is we should just keep borrowing in order to take care of our streets, and then get this utility set up. I don't know. Is there any other thoughts from anybody else?
Sure, and I'll speak specifically to the transportation utility first. I do have a concern with the utility that I've stated previously, and that it started as a way to alleviate special assessments, and it became 3 times the amount, and we're going to fund everything transportation related with that. That was my fear when we were talking about special assessments, was that this utility, once in place, will be able to be changed and adjusted and increased on every different council or under a different administration once that's in place. And it already happened before we even got there. So we went from alleviating special assessments to taking care of everything. In regards to the utility, there's also, I believe, going to be some problems with litigation. We would be on the forefront in the state of doing this. I would have liked to have seen us see multiple successful implementations of this. From what we've heard, there's cities that have done it, but they're just recently, and they're not sure how that's going to pan out, or they're facing litigation as well. So I don't know if I'm all the way there on implementing the utility at what it's proposed at. I am for alleviating special assessments. In regards to the debt, I do believe it's more complicated than just saying we shouldn't take any debt. At a time like this, we would see an increase in perhaps paying for it with different tax levy. I also, if we, like in someone's personal life, if they're borrowing, if they have a good job and they do have an income, typically they are going to take a mortgage. They are going to borrow for a car. That's not to say that debt isn't bad, but if we do create this savings account, you bring in the factor of, okay, is that money sitting there? And then without it being invested, we're losing a percentage of that every year due to inflation. There's a lot of different factors at play, and I wouldn't say that we should totally go out and borrow and we should continue to bring our debt up to the limit, but comparable to other neighboring cities, I feel like we're in good shape. So I think there is room definitely to trim the budget and start working towards that. I don't know if it's responsible to do it all in 1 year. As we have had finance meetings and we've met with each department budget, and to do that now, I just would feel it would be a little late in the game, but I do think there is ways to make motions and perhaps save in different areas of the budget.
Jake, as for the transportation utility, the council hasn't decided what you wanted to fund yet. So if the council decides you just want to fund the special assessment portion, the council can decide that, which would obviously adjust all the rates.
Right.
So
And
that hasn't been
that is
decided yet.
open yet. I just am basing off of the discussions that have been
Yep.
taking place. But yeah, I'm not sure I'm completely there on putting a transportation utility out. It is an increased tax, no matter which way you look at it. You can call it a fee, you can call it what you want, but it is an increased tax, and it is a tool that can be used in the future to increase taxes in several different ways to an amount that we might not even be on council to see. So once that tool's in place, that's my concern. And then the second would be, it's just that we already went from special assessments to now we're discussing, not in place yet, all the other different ways we're going to use it.
Good. Did you have your hand up, Jay? Oh, sorry. Next, number 2.
Thanks. Just a comment. I do agree with Jake. We've been looking at this budget now for, specifically at the budget for a couple months now, and honestly, I think we're probably looking at the budget throughout the year. So, getting a little bit late in the game to make some wholesale changes. That's not to say that we can't start looking at the budget for next year. More specifically, within this budget, there's a request from the Police and Fire Commission for $32,208 to hire a firm to go out and interview and hire a fire chief and police chief. And at this time, I'd like to make a motion to move that money out of that budget and into contingency.
So a motion to move, did you have a page number on that?
No, I just have it written on a page because I can't find it either.
Okay. We have a motion to remove the money set aside in the Police and Fire Commission budget for how much money?
It was $32,208.
$32,208.
Yep.
Is there a page number or something, Tim? I just hate voting on something that I don't even see.
Right,
what
that
it
was,
is.
that was part of the, it wasn't in the initial department budgets. They had met in October to include that, to raise their budget, and I included that into the budget changes, that thing that summarized all the changes that to the departmental budgets. And so basically, they proposed a budget of 35,000, the difference between what they had in their budget, and that was a 32,208, and basically that was to pay for the recruiting of a new fire chief and potentially a new police chief.
If they don't put it in their budget and they to pay for a recruiter, who does that? Does anyone know? I mean, in past practice, I guess?
So depends. They've mainly used a company out of Illinois, correct, Sue, to do the recruiting. And I think talking to Ryan, sometimes in the past, Human Resources has kind of collected applications, depended on the level or the amount of money, because if we do some of the work internally, it'll cost us less. If they do it all, it'll cost us more. So they're trying to figure out that combination. But as for Jay, why you want to remove it?
I just
Maybe.
think
Might help.
specifically right now, in the we're looking at replacing a fire chief. I believe that this firm is going to go out and do a search as part of our thing. Nationwide search. I believe that we probably have qualified candidates within that department, and I'm not saying that we should not give them this money, but I think that they should work through the process before we give them this money. So, that's my thought.
Are you saying, do an initial,
Maybe-
do our own work first and see what kind of applicants we get in that, instead of spending the 32,000, if we believe that there are candidates inside that
Correct.
would be qualified for?
Therein lies the contingency. If we cannot find a qualified candidate within these departments or within, I would imagine Ryan or Sue, we're going to advertise this job publicly.
Well, it's really the Police and Fire Commission's call on what they
Correct.
do. So, obviously, if there is no money to spend to, they're going to have to work within the budget, it appears, or else come to you to ask for the funds. But the city is not supposed to get involved in the hiring of the chiefs. So, I guess as far as what's going to happen, that's going to be up to them. But obviously, they're going to have to do it within the funds that they have. So, I guess that's going to be up to them to come to you then if they need more money, or I'm not sure what their plans will be, so.
Are you still? No.
So who requested this amount, Jay?
The Police and Fire Commission.
Police and Fire Commission.
I'm not asking to take this money away from them.
No,
I'm just
that-
asking them to look internally, do it as we normally do it before we go out and spend $17,000 to hire a fire chief with an outside, to hire an outside firm to hire a fire chief or police chief.
And like I said, is that past practice where they've done it themselves? Sue, I know you've been here.
In the past, I would say more often than not, a firm was hired. There was probably one or two times where they did not. There was a time where there was a conflict between the council and the PFC in terms of the funding of the position, and I think it ultimately was funding of the consultant, and at one point, I think it was funded. And there's been times where, as someone had alluded to, that let's say the consultants had given a quote of $10,000, but then they said, well, but if you can use internally the HR department to assist with this and this and this, then it'll only be 7 or something. So there has been times to kind of to try to lessen that total cost. I don't know when the last time would have been that there was no outside consultant. Maybe back when Mitch Waite was hired or promoted from deputy to chief, which was probably
3 chiefs ago.
15 years ago or so, maybe a little less than that. But
Our last 3 fire chiefs came from internal.
after
But
with consultants,
Right, by
yeah,
the,
right,
the
yeah,
consultants
absolutely.
took the last 3 chiefs internally.
Yes, I meant
In the-
the last
right.
time that a
Right.
consultant was not used, but
Right.
And who hires then the fire, that commission chooses, because I'm not an expert in what would be needed, so they choose
Yeah, under
that.
the Police and Fire Commission rules.
Okay. And if they hired a consultant, is it always guaranteed, like you said, like, okay, well, if you do this, this, and this, then it'll only be $7,000? They could or could not give you that option? You don't
right.
know, right?
In the past, consultants have, but we've been able to work that out with them. I guess it probably would depend on the consultant, and but it's possible. I'm sure it would be possible.
Jake?
I'm going to second what Jay said, and just add to it that I agree that we should be looking internally. That is up to the commission, but I think with this motion, it's clear what we would prefer. The other statement that was made is that the last 3 fire chiefs were hired internally. So with that, why do we need to hire a consultant? I'm looking forward to see the candidates that we have. I know there's some great employees of the city currently, and I look forward to seeing what police and fire brings forward.
Jake, did you second what he said, or did you second the motion?
Both.
Okay. I heard you say second, but I wasn't sure if you were seconding what he
We'll
said.
count that as both.
Okay. So oh, sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Sorry, that's okay.
I'm not used to not seeing you speak.
I just hate to tie the commission's hand in that. I agree with if, to see if we can hire internally and that type of stuff, it all sounds good and whatever. But to tie the commission's hand in that we take this money and put it in contingency again to, if it's there, it doesn't mean they have to spend it. I would hope they'd be a little more responsible than that. I think they'd know the wishes of the body and the community of if there's a qualified candidate, look internally in that. So I guess I'd be in favor of leaving it in the budget. It's there wherever it is, I guess. But so I'd be in favor of leaving it in the budget, I guess.
Go ahead, Jay.
So I'm not asking to take it out of the budget. I'm just asking that we take it out of their budget, put it into contingency. Okay. I did have one call from a commission member that, and I believe he told me the vote was 4-1. They don't know exactly what they voted on, but this commission member was not in favor of doing this, hiring this firm. I think there's a lot of other things probably that went into the decision, and I don't know that they've decided to hire a firm yet, but put the money in contingency. If they need it, I guess they can come back and ask for this money and explain why they need the money, why they decided not to. Maybe they won't do any internal interviews at all. But I think we're owed at least an explanation of what they're doing and how they're going to do it. So, thank you.
So okay, Sue, you said that the council doesn't have any say in that. It's just the fire.
In the process, in the selection,
Okay.
right.
So the fire commission, do they feel like if they hired a consultant that it's no favoritism or, anything like that? I mean, is that,
Or
you guys have been here
responsibility.
longer than I have, but I mean, would that be maybe, I'm just thinking of a reason why they wouldn't try most places, to save money, you're going to try to do it internally, and it's like, oh, we're just not getting what we want. Let's try something else. Usually you would try something with less cost, but I don't know, what would the reasons be? I have no idea, so it's hard for me to vote on it.
I can't speak either. I think it's easy, but we do this at the city. We try to recruit, try to take applicants, find an applicant, and if we can't find somebody, then the HR will come to HR and ask to hire basically a recruiter at that point. And I think that's what, if I'm hearing it right, Jay, is that you're requesting that kind of happen, and then should that be unsuccessful, then they can come back to HR and say, hey, we need money to hire a firm or a recruiter. I don't know if I don't want to speak for you, but.
And you would be okay with that if they show, obviously they can't get into details, but I mean, if they said, we've tried and we just don't feel that this A, B, or C, whatever works. Because like I said with Tom, I kind of agree with Tom. I don't want to tie their hands where if there are no qualified applicants there and you're like, okay, well, they ain't going to give us any money. Now we have to settle for blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't want that either, I guess.
I'm not asking to take the money out of the budget. I'm asking to take it out of their budget.
Go ahead, Sue.
Okay, so, but what that means for them is that they will, so if they want to go the way of hiring a consultant, they would make a referral to finance and then get on finances and then the transfer resolution, is that how it would work? I guess I just want to be clear what would happen if this is passed.
Well, obviously being contingency, so to actually, appropriate it to the Police and Fire Commission for its intended purpose, it would have to be a transfer resolution from contingency with the majority vote of the council. Now whether the approval of the contract, the recruiting contract go through HR, that's a different matter. So I think in the past, I don't know if they've ever taken those contracts, recruiting contracts to HR.
No, I think if the money was appropriated to them, and they would be recognized as probably the contracting, responsible party. So I don't think, I'm pretty sure those haven't gone back to council.
And I guess that's a question of whether it should. I mean, if the money's appropriated, we still take contracts back through the council for approval, even though the money's appropriated. So I guess that's a question that,
Right.
right, so.
And that commissioner also reached out to me, and I guess my question was, is there a consideration of even seeking proposals from other agencies that might do this, so you can compare proposals and pricing? But I think they typically use the same firm, if I recall right. Yeah. About Patrick or Dean, any thoughts?
Oh, I'm in favor of Jay's motion.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Guess I'm just trying to keep up with this. Is there a reason, like, is this a distrust thing, or we're thinking they're going to act, like, why are we not trusting, or what is, go ahead.
There's no issues with trust here. I just would hope that before we would go out and spend $17,000, like one of the things Shane said was, did we put this out for bids? Is there more than one company that's capable of doing it? Could we get it done cheaper? I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't follow the police and fire commission that closely. Probably couldn't even tell you other than one person who's on that board. But I would just hope that they'd put a little more effort into it than just saying, we're going to hire a consultant. So that's where I come down with this. There's nothing to do with trust. They're going to make the decision. They've made good decisions in the past. I trust that they'll continue to make good decisions. So it's just how they get to that decision is where I'm at. Thank you.
Yeah, I think sometime, or at least for me, the concern comes in is that, we spend, the community spends a significant amount of investment training and these people going through the promotion, and they get to that final step. And, I would hope that investment would have maybe a little more priority. Fortunately, our last three fire chiefs have come from internal, which says a lot. And, and nothing against the police department, but I think they're going to be in a different situation when the police chief retires, because I don't know if they have those candidates ready at this point. And so we might be talking differently then. But I just think that, our message to those groups is that, you kind of get to that final hour and then, well, we're not going to promote you, but, you can go somewhere else if you want that top spot. So that's a concern of mine.
Would it be possible to reach out to the Police and Fire Commission and maybe hear their 2 cents on why they feel like they need this firm to come in and potentially help select an individual, or potentially by before next Tuesday's meeting? Is that something that we could potentially find out by then?
We can have maybe, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think, first off, there are 5 of them that have other jobs and don't, do this for a living. Secondly, it's kind of time intensive, even if you're, I'm assuming you're just not doing an internal, you're also advertising outside, at least locally. I mean, so our HR department has not done this before. most of the time there's an assessment center that's set up. Other chiefs are brought in. I mean, it's kind of a drawn-out thing, and I think they've probably been involved in it, and so, as someone said, it's probably easy to just have someone else do that, but, I would say it's fairly common to have a consultant help with that. So, I mean, I don't know if Ryan has anything to say on it, but it would be his department that probably would then end up doing most of the work, whereas, the consultant could take care of all of it, or HR could do a little bit of it. But, I mean, and I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm just thinking that in the past, it's probably easy for them. It's someone can do everything start to finish. They have an expertise in that area, and it's all done, and not have to worry. It take the time from our HR department to try to run it on top of everything else that they're doing.
Thanks. Sue's very much spot on with that. I was at, I believe it was the October PFC meeting when this topic came up. So the question was actually posed to me in that very fashion. And essentially what it came down to, and Sue's correct in the point that I said our department would do what we could to get to wherever we need it to be, get it to finalize, whittle down, so if we shared that cost or if that cost could be minimized, absolutely. The issue would be, or the contention point would be, referring back to the assessment center and the situational questions, right? So a fire chief, they're put in situational questions for what would you do in XYZ event. I'll be honest, I have no idea what that person from California, our own station coming out of local 425, they're all going to say great things, and we won't have a clue what they're saying. Is it right or wrong? It'd be like Mr. Bemke trying to teach me to run his end loader at the pit, right? I'm not going to have a clue while he's the expert. So if we were going to hire somebody to do that, Mr. Bemke would be in asking the questions, because I don't know the first thing about even how to start an end loader. So on that premise, it was like, we can get to a certain point, but we unfortunately aren't qualified to get a fire chief, be it internal or external. But getting to that process, we'd be happy to do what we could to help minimize those costs, be it the recruiting, the posting, the whatever, even if we went through the first couple phases of interviews. But once you get to the assessment center, so on and so forth, without going too deep into privacy, but we're in the process of, I just know we're in the process of hiring a firefighter right now. And the exams that they go through, that HR sends to them for certain testing, and that amount that's taken care of is beyond our training or capabilities. So I don't know if that helps or hurts, but that was kind of what my response was at the last PFC meeting, was we can get to a certain point, but we're not going to know if we're being told, they're all going to be, you're going to have 4 people, there's going to be 4 great answers, and we won't know which one is best. And that was the honest truth from me, and that was in speaking with the 2 other colleagues of mine in the department, so.
Jay?
I'd just like to address Mr. Austin's concern with having them come in. Again, I'm not asking to take this money out of the budget. I'm asking that it be moved to contingency, so if they come in and say, this is what we need, this is what we're doing, and why we're doing it, the money will be available to them, so. Thank you.
But
And I understand that, but what goes across my mind, it seems to be that we hope that we have a qualified candidate internally or in the area or whatever. But I don't want to get to that we're micromanaging how this is being done. And that we start putting money somewhere and then somebody has to come back and plead and beg and borrow so that they have to, a commission to do the job. The money's there, it's just, I guess, how it would be there, it's just, how it would be acquiesced for the commission to be able to use it. I hope everybody listened to what Brian had to say. I think that was a very honest, forthright answer. In some of these technical positions, it takes, I'm not saying that it would have to be, but sometimes it takes somebody with the expertise, the qualifications, the knowledge in what you're looking for in a candidate to judge in that. And in some cases, you may have 10 people that apply for a job, and that's why sometimes then you see that 6 got interviewed. 6 got interviewed, 4 came back, and 3 or 2 got a second or third interview. That's how the process goes. But so you have to have the people doing the interviewing, asking the questions, understanding it, that have the knowledge of what the questions are, and the knowledge of what the answers should be. So it's I just hate to me it's just someone looking that we're trying to micromanage this commission, in this case, trying to get them to do something by taking their money away. It's kind of like, Johnny, you can't go to the swimming pool because I'm going to keep that $5 because you were a bad boy last night until you make up for it 2 days from now by being an extra good boy. So it's just, over the years, we haven't heard this for a while. I guess maybe for me it's coming, or I guess if the old timers were left, they'd be saying, wow, the micromanaging part, and I see that happening here. And I don't just see it in this particular situation, I see it in other places within City Hall here. So I'm not in favor of it. This thing that we can take the money from somewhere, but we ain't getting rid of it. We're just going to shuffle it over here, so it's there. Make it look good. I just, I'm not in favor of operating that way either. If that's the budget for the Fire and Police Commission, to me that's where it should be. I guess if you're going to remove it from them, then you take it all the way away from them, altogether, and not put it in contingency that's there. If you feel that they don't need it, the request, they have the request for it. Now, are you going to fund their request? That's what it is. It's not the the only reason we're even talking about it is because they made the request. We won't be talking about this 32 or whatever it is, 32,208, if they didn't make that request. They didn't request to put in contingency. They made a request for in their budget, if I'm understanding it right. Not a contingency, in their budget. To me, it's our decision then. Do we fund their budget? Or do we not fund the budget? Not that we fund contingency. Contingency is for other stuff than that. It's I just don't know. I think, somewhat we're getting way off the path on how this government's supposed to be run and how we operate. It's not a free lunch. Even though we all like to do it for free. Without taxes, nothing would happen. The city would not move. Without taxes, construction jobs would not take place. Without taxes, roads wouldn't be built, so then you wouldn't have to plow them or salt them. You wouldn't have to put sewer and water in, because everybody would be digging a hole and building a little house on top of it. Run outside when it's 30 below to use it quick at night. Let me tell you, that ain't no fun. No matter if the movies make it look like it was. So if people want to make cuts, speak up and make the cuts. People want to make cuts. If you want to cut 5%, tell me what you want to cut for 5%. It's like people in Washington want to cut this and cut that, but no one wants to say what they want to cut for programs. Okay, okay. We won't allude to different stuff. We just thank you. I apologize. I apologize. But I think that's just where we're getting. In this case, just to get back to this, it's their request is that amount of money into their budget if they need it to use it for that. I don't think it's for us to take it and put it in contingency that if they then need it to come and ask us that they need it to hire a consultant. Granted, I'm not even going to guess what they may do, but listening to what Ryan had to say, and he was spot on, told you the truth. There are people with the qualifications, the education, and that's why there are consultants. I don't agree with all of them. I think some are probably a waste of time. But you have to weigh what you're getting into and getting. And in some of these, it's worth the money to get into if that's what you have to. So you get the best of what you're looking for. So that's all, and I'll shut up.
Thank you. Any?
I got something to say.
Go ahead, Dean.
Connor, I was just going to add, I certainly don't want to go on record as saying I think we're micromanaging anything, but if we have talked throughout what I've seen from this meeting, it sounds like history, we're going by history again, and history says we've only used one consultant. I would certainly be, I would think it'd be in the government's best interest to get more than one bid on something like this. And I'm certainly in favor of using our own people to go through the existing labor pool first. I don't think I don't believe that Mr. Memke has any desire to take the money out of the budget. I just think he wants to make sure it's used responsibly. So I'm in agreement with this motion. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Go ahead.
My concern is this, not knowing what exactly this firm is for. If it's for recruitment, the only way you're going to know you're getting the best person for the job is to be able to compare that person to other viable candidates. And if these funds are for the recruitment of such folks, then I feel like Tom had mentioned, you're kind of micromanaging Police and Fire Commission to make a decision. And I feel a position like fire chief and police chief are very important to the city, And if we don't take that recruitment process seriously and provide what is needed to find the right person for the job, I think we're making a mistake. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anything further? Seeing none? Everybody remember the motion? Go ahead.
Can you please repeat the motion?
So we have a motion and a second to remove the funding from the PFC committee for what amount again?
$32,208.
Remove the funding from that and put it into contingency. Okay. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Austin,
I'm a no.
you're a no. Mr. Veneman,
Aye.
aye. Mr. Zacher, Mr. Rayom, Ms. Evanston,
No?
Mr. Katna,
All right.
you're an aye, and Mr. Delaney,
Aye.
aye, and Mr. Femke.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, it's a tie. I'm going to vote aye because the money's still there, and I'd like to see at least some proposals for maybe some other firms than just one, and I'd favor then supporting if that's the route they want to go for recruitment. So my vote is aye. So the motion passes to remove the funding. Any further? Go ahead.
I just have a question. Is Ryan still in here?
Yep.
I can't see him. He's like, oh, no. Okay, the professional development, no, I'm looking at the department budget on page 49. The $30,000, and that's for the supervisory leadership training class for the city management personnel, for the $30,000. And I believe it's the best workplace model leader, this packet here. So, I was kind of looking through it, and I mean, I don't mean it's not important. I do not want to say that at all. But I know there are employers that that you can get this kind of training online. I would think for a much cheaper cost that you as the HR director, I mean, how it's billed out department-wise or anything like that with HIPAA, and I mean, the discrimination and behavioral, I mean, this is HR background, some of this. Is there anything cheaper, I mean, that we can do besides the $30,000 for this? For the, I mean, have you looked at anything else that, I mean, it is important that our management stays on top of rules and, and discrimination and bullying and, I mean, all those kinds of things. That is very, 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 very important in a successful employment. But is there anything that's cheaper that you may have? I know we have something similar at the county, but we don't, I mean, is there something cheaper than the $30,000, I guess is all I'm asking. Thanks.
Great question. The answer is yes. In what capacity? We did weigh out some options. The league does offer this type of somewhat this type of training, but it's not customized. Okay. So, and a little background on this. We've had training through the league, and it's good. It's fine. It really is. And now they just partnered with I believe it's a law firm. They partnered with them, and they'll be doing some of their services, again, for free as part of our league, right, agreement. I talked with them last week or 2 weeks ago, and they don't offer, like, according to the materials you have in front of you, they don't offer the conflict resolution, effective communication skills, that type of stuff. They're basically, you want training on harassment? Yep, we'll come in and do that, bang, now you're legal. Okay? That we do, or that we can do. Some of this stuff, can it be done in-house? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I assume you know as well as I do, we could say the same thing to the employees, but you bring in an expert and they say the same thing, and it'll be like, wow, that guy really made sense. Or, oh, maybe Hartman did know one of the things he was talking about, or the other people in our department, right? But it's more, this group of the supervisor or the leadership that we're looking to put in this training, to my knowledge, or it's been quite some time that they've been offered any type of training along these lines or in this capacity. So when you look at it, yeah, $30,000, that's a big chunk of change. When you break it out by individual, that's $1,000 per person, and you break it out, I think they would get 8 4-hour sessions, so you break out the $1,000 by 32. It's not a terrible hourly rate as far as what we'd be being paid for per employee, in trying to catch them up for the training that has not been afforded to them in the past. And I'm not, and you'll see, we would have proposed in here some fire department and police department personnel in their management levels. Excuse me. We would also be inviting them to come, and their chiefs have been on board with this to this point, because the training they get in their areas, and you can see in your budgets, they have pretty substantial training budgets compared to the training budgets that, for something of this capacity for the rest of the organization. This would help them get some of the training they may not get. If I go to police training, I don't even know the exact term, so I apologize. But I go to firefighter training, I get trained in XYZ on how to be a battalion chief of my crew, okay? But how do I maybe communicate as a battalion chief to somebody in the HR department? When's the right time that I reach out to HR? When do I need to contact the city attorney? Or whatever those things are. This dynamic, or this proposal, is trying to help mold all of that together. So that's how we came up with a group of approximately 30 to 32 people. So going back to your original question, are there cheaper options? Yes. Can we do it? Yes, or parts of it. I guess I'll be honest, for lack of a better term, I thought shoot for the stars and go for the best product out there. I've had a working relationship with Michael Best over the last on and off for 20 years. Like I said, Sue had afforded me the opportunity. We looked at another organization, but they're only able to come in and do law-based harassment and bullying, those things that are law. This would be a combination, a little bit of everything, effective communication skill, like I said, conflict resolution, how to document. Why one of the things we encounter is well, we're coming to HR now, we've got this problem. Okay? And so Johnny has been late for whatever, and okay, you've got the documentation on that? No. Okay. Well, now we're going to start. So kind of start from there. Does that help? I know I went on, but I guess I'm a little passionate about this one. So.
No, it does. It does. It just seems like I talked talked with you before, that it just seemed kind of steep. And if I may, how often do you guys have department head meetings? Like, does the mayor and you and the other department heads, how often do you guys meet?
I do not have department head meetings.
You do not?
Nope.
Oh. Do the other department heads get together at all, ever?
Like, as far, I know, excuse me, I meet like the mayor goes around and meets with each department head individually, as far as other department heads holding their own department head meet. I'm not in charge of that, so I don't know what their meeting times or schedules are. I guess that's a question.
That just surprises me, because I always just thought in every organization, especially as young as, in close as all the departments are here, that it's good, like you're saying, even for this kind of training, to reach out to each other as department heads. I mean, okay, I can see doing this like one time, getting everybody on the ball, excuse me, something to reference back to, like, oh, what did they say in this to do this? But I think it'd be very helpful if you had communication amongst leadership here to work through some of this stuff. Or, you may forget it, one department head may forget about this, or, well, I use this example. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I did this once, or, I think it'd be a good idea, because you share so many different things. So I'm just really surprised at that we don't.
So I like what you're saying. This would give us a starting block to that, right? Because right now, if I say, oh, hey, let's get 5 of us together, Tim and myself and whoever else, we get to, and all of a sudden Tim's like, yeah, I did it this way. And I'm like, oh my gosh, nope, we don't want to be doing it that. You can't put somebody in a closet for 4 hours, right? But, sorry, now it's out there. But this would give us that starting block where we then could come back and be, Tim and I are meeting and he's like, all about this. It'd be like, yeah, do you remember when we talked about, and everybody would have been in the room, everybody would have gotten, we all would have started from the same point. Because right now we have people starting, Mr. DeSource, who's been here 27 years. I've been here a year and a half. And we've got other supervisors that are 2 years, but they've been with the organization for 20. Everybody's coming with different starting points. And to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, we've never had something where somebody comes in, or where this comes in and boom, everybody's at the same starting point. We all heard the same thing. We all attended the same class. And now, and HR would be included in this too, because when I look through this, I'm like, yep, there's stuff we can learn from it too. So I like what you're saying and where you're headed with that, and I think this would give us that base to start from.
I agree. Like I said, I would agree with it. It's a pretty hefty price tag, but if this could be a starting block where step one, where you have this and department heads work together after that to collaborate in experiences. I mean, I know as an employee, I don't know everything. I mean, I've been in my position for 17 years, but I don't always know every, and it's nice. I talk to my coworker, hey, what do we do with this? And your department heads, and you're busy every day doing different things. I think it'd be important to have something to refer back to all meet on and to talk about this kind of stuff and build on this. So, thank you.
Just one more thing to add, because it's obviously a hefty price tag, and I know dollars are at a minimum right now. If there's things, if it's a take it or leave it type thing, I had talked to the mayor about this too. Go big or go home. But I would talk with this proposer to say, can we, kind of what we talked about with the PFC and the fire chief, can we combine something? Maybe we do some parts of it, or you just give us enough. We could do a couple things, and maybe we whittle that 30 down to whatever it be. Then again, I'll fall back to, the quality of a product, but.
Go ahead, Jake.
So I used to work for a company for a lot of years, and we provided training to government employees similar to what's being discussed. And I can just say that we did offer online training. We offered online training with webinars, and we offered in-person training. And throughout all the years, all the data states that the retention for in-person training is much higher, and the actual practice of what was learned in training ends up being a lot more effective with in-person training. So there is a value to it, and I would say, based on my experience with that, I think the investment in our employees of doing an in-person training is worth it, and then perhaps a refresher in an online format every year. There's stuff out there that checks the boxes, per se, to make sure that we can say that we trained our employees and everything, but that's not the same as actually getting hands-on with a consultant, doing scenario-based work, things of that nature.
Yeah, and I guess a little bit further is, I choose not to have a monthly department head meeting. I guess as long as I'm mayor, that's going to be my choice. But our department heads talk regularly together when they have questions. I believe a department head meeting is more functional if there is a greater reason to meet. You know, I've sat in many department head meetings here where we sit, we go around the table, what's new in your department, and then we leave. And I feel that is very unproductive of very high salary worth of time. But if engineering needs to talk to another department, they do. And we highly encourage that. We have specific meetings with departments when it relates to those departments on specific topics. And that's just how I'm going to choose to manage and be my management style. Any further questions for Mr. Hartman? Thank you. No, I'm sorry. I missed my buttons. I'm so used to look.
So I'll make this quick, but I guess the more I'm thinking about it, the more I have to go ahead and follow my heart, if you will. I guess it's just what I believe. And when I think about the 1.5 million, however we kind of, it's almost kind of like I don't know. Like we can say we're taking the debt out for roads, but in reality, we're taking the debt out for whatever we want to put it in front of or in that budget, because it's just over budget. So I know we're paying the library, in the tune of $1.3 million. So in reality, we're taking out debt in order to pay the library $1.3 million. Don't get me wrong, I love the library. I've loved going there with my kids since they were little. We're looking at the 1.5 million in debt and the 500,000 roughly in special assessments, and that's kind of how it goes. And in my head, what I'm saying is, we can, if we wanted to. I think I was kind of hearing that, like if we wanted to, we could reduce that and bring it in line, the $2 million, and have a balanced budget. And I guess I see that there's ways to do it. But again, I also realize it's not going to be a popular thing to do. So, and at the same time, it could be 5%, because really that's what we're looking at, 5%, $2 million. Or it could be 2.5% if we find the $1 million somewhere else. So, I'm going to make a motion to lower what we pay the library, $1 million, and ask the departments to find the 2.5% in the budget to lower it another $1 million, so that we have the $2 million. We don't have to take out any debt, we don't have to do special assessments, and we don't have to do the transportation utility.
So was that 2.5%, 2% or 2.5%? Did you say?
It would be 2.5% of the budget if we get the $1 million from the library.
And the $1 million from the library would be about our full appropriation amount that we make to them.
I believe it's somewhere in the ballpark of 1.36 is what we give to them.
Yep.
So we'd be given 360,000 still.
Okay. Did you catch that?
Can I speak to that?
Each
Each
department.
individual budget?
I
Or
think
where-
so, but I realize what Tim's saying is some just can't be lowered. So,
By 2.5%.
but I think, I don't know, in my heart, I'm thinking there's enough in there that we could find it if we wanted to.
Okay, so we have a motion I guess first, do we have a second before we start discussing it?
I'll second that. Can I also speak of it?
Yep. So we've got a motion and a second. Go ahead.
I would like to just modify, I think the total city appropriation for the library should be $373,954.15, which, if you look at their budget with all their other income, they would be at $1,090,541. I'm sorry, $1,090,541.15. But like I said, the city appropriation of $373,954.15, I think is totally fair. And that's the only thing that I would like to change about that, but I definitely second.
That's it. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, just, when we're talking about what the city's support of the library, if you remember a couple months ago, we exempted ourselves from the library tax that the county levies on other municipalities, and that requires a certain level of support. And I'm looking for it, but I do believe that level of support is like $443,000. I'm trying to look for the spreadsheet for that, but I'm not sure that since we passed that resolution, I don't know how that would complicate things for, that then I'm guessing we would then be included in that tax for the county. So I just want to make that point.
I would be in agreement to whatever that number is, that we would still fund them that.
I'm looking for it right now. Here we go. Okay. I know I have it somewhere.
I would like to speak, Mr. Mayor, if you could.
Okay.
Yeah, why don't you speak while Tim's looking for the number?
I got it.
Sure. That number that I came up with is a combination of a few different things, but it does also represent a number used in Wood County by another municipality that is exempt. So that's like the per capita rate that they use, and they're still exempt from the from additional city taxes. So what Tim is saying is that we would add on another $300,000 or $400,000. That I don't think that would be appropriate. I still think we would be exempt from that. Also, if you look at the other libraries of cities that are comparable, that is still way higher than any of the other cities comparable to us as far as what their budget is. And I think we discussed that quite a bit, so everybody should be pretty up to speed. If anybody has any questions, they can ask.
Tim, did you find that number?
Yeah. Basically, the city support of the library to be exempted from the county tax based on the calculation that was that derived the resolution that we passed, I think it was a couple months ago, is that the city support would have to be at least $481,236. Which means, and to be exempted from the county tax based on that resolution, the appropriation can only be reduced by $809,509. So as it stands today.
You said 809,000?
Yeah, 509. So it's like I said, that resolution, the calculation, they do a calculation, to be exempted, that our support has to be at least this in order to be exempted from that tax, and that was the $481,236.
So we could amend that number in the motion to the 841?
the most you could reduce the appropriation and be exempted according to that resolution is 809,509.
Put that exact number in there.
Mr. Delaney, you good with that amendment?
So then the city appropriation is 481,000.
236.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
And then the difference you're saying would, whatever that percentage is, would have to come out of the city budget.
Depending on how much we want to try to shoot for in order to get the roads done without taking out debt or special assessments. And that number seems to be somewhat moving, I guess, so I'm not quite sure how to do it, but I would like to
Good. Oh,
When
I knew in making the motion, it wasn't going to be an easy motion, because the number is elusive. But I think, how do we get to that number to say, we can do this? If we choose to do it, we can do it. It sounds like nobody's ever, you said it was mentioned a while back, but this is just how it was always done. And I think the city's going through changes right now in terms of leaving being a mill city and becoming more of an independent, entrepreneurial-minded city. I guess that's my take on it. Like, we need to start bringing in residents. We need to start bringing in businesses, like small entrepreneurial businesses. And I don't think we're changing. I don't think we're realizing that we have to change from what we were to what we're going to be in the future. And I think this is a start.
yeah, and I think this year is also a little unique because we have the extra 700,000 in because we had to do Jackson Street. So that's why it even bumped it up more this year versus most other years potentially.
The number seems to be $2 million.
Roughly.
$2 million is what we keep going back to, that we're regularly over.
So when does the budget have to, when does this have to be approved?
Tuesday.
Okay, so we're going to eliminate $2 million from now till Tuesday, make department heads come up with eliminating 2.5% of each budget. And so for Public Works, which is the biggest, they're going to have to determine what reorganized before now and Tuesday, what projects are not going to be done according to their capital improvement plan, right? In their 5-year, that, I don't know what page this is on, Tim, help me, if you have it. The
streets that are being chosen.
here, the public capital improvement from, on the department budgets for Public Works. So if
Well-
they have to eliminate 2.5, they'd have to determine from now till Tuesday of what projects will be done and what will not be done.
Well, I guess I could say yes and no. If the budget reductions are going to be used to reduce the debt, what we have to approve by December 1st is actually the property tax levy, because that's what's going to obviously be calculated and go on the tax bills. But we can work on the other parts of the budget as far as that aren't affected by the tax levy. If this is just reducing debt and offsetting debt with reduction in expenditures, we could reduce the tax levy and work on the other parts. But, still, in my opinion, it's like I understand what's being said. And, like I said, this discussion has occurred before. But, it's one of those things where, I would say is if the wish of the council is that we don't want to borrow for street construction projects, I think that's something that, it's going to take some time and look at the various budgets as opposed to just cross-the-board cuts and things like that. We really have to look at our operations, look at our discretionary spending, look at our capital, our equipment, what we're spending money on, and really come up with a plan of saying, okay, where can we make reductions? Where can we change operations? Where can we change priorities to get to that point? I think, and like I said, I think it's something that, if it's the wish of this council to do that, I would say that's a budget goal for the 2023 budget. That's just my opinion, so that we have time to really look and make informed decisions about where we're going to be changing services and priorities.
And if we lower the tax levy, you can't ever get it back up unless resolution, or,
Well, if you're saying that we're going to reduce expenditures to offset the debt, those don't affect the tax levy that we'd be adopting by resolution on Tuesday. Now, if you're going to be saying, now we need to cut expenditures to reduce the levy, yeah, then we would need to do that before Tuesday, or, we'd have to have a special council meeting, because by December 1st, we need to get that information to the county.
So we held a series of finance and property committee meetings where we went over pretty much every individual department and had the opportunity to speak at any item within their budget that we didn't think was appropriate. I think those would have been good times to pick away at their budget if we feel that cuts were necessary. I was at those meetings. I'm not going to put it on the department heads to now go out and decide that they should find this money when we met with them and they went over their budget with us. And to be honest, all the budgets were pretty tight. So I would say anybody who's in favor of an across-the-board cut or getting to that point, that they should be coming forward with exactly what each department should deduct. And if there is those things, I think we can talk about those individually, but just to do a broad cut and expect the department heads to come back in and talk to those when we just did this the past month, 2 months, is not fair.
Go ahead, Matt, and then Ryan.
I was just going to say that what I heard before was we don't want to micromanage. I think everybody knows where the fluff is, and they would be able to find it better than we would to tell them what they need to do. I don't necessarily think is the way we'd want to go. I think we would let them figure out where they can get some of that padding from.
Good, right.
Those of you that don't know, I'm the board, or the council-appointed member for the library board. So, with that being said, I can say with honesty that things are not run perfectly over at the library. I think there's definitely some work that could be done to rein in some of the numbers over there. But with that being said, I believe slashing $800,000 from the library budget without truly understanding what exactly is going to happen is not very sound thinking. I think in order to make a slash of that size, we need to know exactly what is going to come of it on the library's end. So I would not be in favor until I had all the information in front of me.
From my understanding from the library is once the money's allotted, we don't have any say in it, so we don't really know what it's like. We don't have a say in necessarily like what can and can't be done. So.
I think something unique with the board now is that, as Ryan can attest to, it's had a very high turnover. So there are a lot of new people over there with, I think, some different thoughts. And so there is new people there looking at it.
But,
Go ahead, Dean.
Tim or Mayor Blazer, could you guys go over again one more time the exact deadlines of budget and December 1 and exactly what it means, just where we would have to have every deadline to?
So Tim, if you want to cover that, it's more so to make sure we get the numbers over to the county so they can print the tax bills. But
Right, I mean, we have
Okay,
to,
so if you could say it one more time, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
sure, we have to adopt by resolution, adopting the tax levy and have it to the county by December 1st. So when that resolution is adopted by council, and that's for the property tax levy. As far as, adopting the budget, you can adopt the budget. And once you adopt the budget, you can amend it to anything you want by the vote of the council. So what I'm saying is if you're wanting to reduce expenditures that would offset the debt, usually we don't go to the issue debt till like early spring. But, you don't want to start a new budget, obviously, before, start of the year, when you start on your new fiscal budget, you kind of want that in place. So I think you're going to want kind of, have that resolved by the beginning of the year. Also, if it goes to reducing positions, whatever, there's a procedure to follow for that. That's going to be have to approved by, if we're going to be reducing positions in the budget and, reducing people's positions, I'm guessing that's going to have to go through the committee process and things like that. So, but then you have, as the deeper you get into your new fiscal budget, obviously some of those cuts might not be effective till then, and then obviously you might not achieve that goal of what you're trying to do. So that's why I kind of go to reiterate that, we've had these discussions in the past with the council about borrowing, and I understand. And if it's the will of this council to say, hey, we need to wean ourselves off budget or debt or reduce the amount of debt, I think that's something that we need to work on and be a budget goal for 2023 so that we can really look and make informed decisions.
Always bump this mic. Did you have something you want to?
No, I agree. And, yes, do I think some things could have, yes. But as far as what Matt said about fluff, that kind of insults me. I'm not on the finance committee, but, department heads have worked very hard. So has the finance and property committee. Department heads have come forth with these budgets. And to say that there's fluff in there, I think is kind of a slap in the face because I don't think anybody puts a lot of fluff in their budgets. That's just not fiscally responsible. The other thing is, I just want to make sure that we're all making, kind of going with Ryan Austin, is in order to make a decision, I need to see what it's going to affect. Yeah, it's easy to say, well, let's get rid of 2%, blah, blah, blah. But I want to know what 2% are we getting rid of? I think that's very important. And each one of us were elected to represent the people of the city of Wisconsin Rapids. And this is not a business. I know some of you have business backgrounds, but it's, yes, we all are fiscally responsible as individuals and as business owners. However, this is not a business, and we need to remember that. So it's pretty late in the game to do the 2.5 reduction across the board without knowing what each department has to get rid of. What roads aren't we going to be doing? They're definitely not getting any better right now, and I hate to see it get any worse. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Go ahead.
My apologies for using the word fluff or padding. I was trying to seek out just the right word in my head, but I think there's always some there in any budget or business. And I understand what you're saying, that this isn't a business, it's a government, but it is a corporation, and we do have a CEO, and it does follow by the same rules, especially financially, that, if any business is going under if you don't follow a tight budget and stay within that budget. And if you're borrowing, I don't know. I don't see it as the best case scenario for sustainable. But I do agree with you that businesses come and businesses go, whereas Wisconsin Rapids, by all rights, should be here for the next 1,000 years or so. Depending on what happens with the earth, I suppose. It's going to be here a long, long time. So I think we should have a sustainable plan for that. But I also understand what you're saying, and I appreciate all the input. And again, my head gets kind of, I don't know, single track maybe, one way thinking. But I think it sounds like we can do it. Sounds like what Tim's saying is we can do it. We need time to do it. And I do apologize to everybody too, because it just got on the board like some of the other folks here. And time-wise, like I'm spending most of my time trying to figure out what I'm doing here. So it's kind of a learn as we go. I would like to withdraw my motion with the understanding that I think we should dive in seriously for the next year to figure out some of these possibilities that are out there to get us on track to where we need to be and go from there. And I know that comes down to, if I can say this, because I heard other people say it about me taking Scott Kellogg's position. He may be back here next time just because of what I just said, you know, and he did a really good job with what we have. And I'm not looking to make the, you know, enemies with the library. I'm just saying that we shouldn't be going into debt to pay for the library. I think that there's two massive foundations in our community that probably could help with funding the library where they already do to some degree. And I think that money's there. I don't want to see Wisconsin Rapids get weaker. I want to see it shrink down and then start rebuilding in a very sound way. Whereas right now, I don't necessarily feel like, we're just kind of hoping we keep making it through and kind of taking that off of putting that on the backs of the existing taxpayers. And I think that our new model should be, let's get more residents and more businesses to help pay for more taxes and start trying to grow the city versus just trying to take more and more off the backs of the people that live here now. So thank you for your time.
Go ahead.
John?
Jake and then you, Dean.
Thank you. So in regards to the library budget, we did have a finance and property committee meeting that we did meet with.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Are you going to move on to something else?
I'm going to make a motion.
So, okay, so let's, he requested to withdraw his motion, so I guess if it's, to your pleasure with, unanimous consent, if you guys agree that that motion is withdrawn. Are you guys good with that?
Yes.
Yeah? Patrick's
Yes.
thinking yet? And Ron, you guys are all good with that? Okay.
I'm not really good with it, just for the fact that,
Okay, so what we'll do then, since we do have a person that objects, we'll vote on withdrawing that motion. No, we're voting on, voting that we dispose of it and get rid of it. Yep, and if Patrick wants to speak to, I know he's against withdrawing the motion. I didn't know if he wanted to speak any further on that.
we could, it's kind of two motions in one, concerning two different things. One about the library and then one about the budget. Here, we're so close. We have a council that could do some really great things. As far as the budget goes, I mean, we're 95% of the way there. And then right at the end, like it's been every other year, it just gets pushed through with more debt being added on. So I'm not for, well, one, we've taken a really close look at the library. Cities our size, our library is highly funded, way more than any other city our size, and our residents are paying for that. Our specific city residents are paying way more than other cities our size. So I think that should be put in line, and so that's my 2 cents on that.
So I believe Jake is planning to speak about the library, but we need to dispose of, withdrawing the motion. And so I guess we don't need a motion on that. We just need to, okay, just, Do I need to do a roll call or anything? Yeah, I'll just, since we're doing roll calls anyways, want to make sure we record everybody's vote correctly. Mr. Austin?
Yes to withdraw.
Okay. Mr. Benjamin?
Yes, on withdrawal.
Yes. And Mr. Zacher? Mr. Rayom? And Miss Evanson?
Yes.
Mr. Katna?
Yes.
Mr. Delaney?
Hey,
Nay. And then we have Mr. Bemke.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries 7 ayes, 1 nay. Mr. Katna?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in regards to the Mcmillan Library, so we did have a Finance and Property Committee meeting where the director did come in and speak to their budget. I had some disagreements with where they have money allotted, specifically in their position and wages. I mentioned in that Finance and Property Committee meeting that there is some redundancies in these positions. Actually, the rebuttal to my comment in that was that 2 of these positions are not in the library much. They're always out and visiting schools and in the community, to which the committee in general and those in the room had several questions. So being that there is redundancies there, I think a good place to start on this is to disappropriate $150,000 from what's proposed. Leave it on them. They can decide which positions they want to consolidate, how they want to go about that, but there is positions in here specifically that could be consolidated. I mean, there's a youth services manager and a young adult services manager, for example. 2 different positions. I didn't feel that the statement that was made on why those are necessary, I don't completely buy that. I think they can find out where they want to do this. With the way the library budget works, we appropriate the money, then they decide from there. This is what I would like to see as a step in that direction, is $150,000 out of the proposed budget, and they decide with their position and wages, and they're going to do a study too where they want to take that from, but we make that decision now and then confirm it next week, and we can move forward from there. So do I motion the total amount of what their budget would be with the $150,000 taken out, or do I motion to take $150,000 out?
Okay,
Well,
Tim.
I was going to say, it's like, I mean, if your motion is to reduce the library appropriation by $150,000, but there's an opposite side. It's like, so that $150,000 is taken out of the budget. Do you want that to reduce the tax levy, reduce the debt, go into contingency, fund some other purpose?
Sure.
So there's an opposite side of that equation. So I just like that should be included in the motion, so I know how to adjust the budget appropriately.
So at this point, I would say that we place it in contingency. I've spoken with the mayor, and I don't know where this money might be needed, but in the event that there is a need throughout the city, perhaps for another position in another department, we have that there. If not, it's in contingency, and we can decide what to do with it at a later time.
Good.
Sorry, I was out. Could you repeat? You made a motion? Sorry.
Correct, yeah. So I won't repeat the whole thing, but essentially, we're reducing the library budget by $150,000. And I came up with that number being that their director and manager position average salary is around $73,000, so this gives them the opportunity to consolidate a couple of those positions and have a cost saving to the taxpayer.
So we have a motion. I guess my 2 cents would be, if we have an extra $150,000 in contingency and we're talking about that, it makes sense just to put on $150,000 less for borrowing. I don't know. I hate to add a new position just because, right, because we have the money. Because we need the money for it next year and year after and year after. But it's just my thoughts. We don't have a second on it yet, but.
Yeah, I mean, my thought on contingency was just so we don't have to make a decision on that right now. I mean, if it's the wish of the council that go towards the debt, I'm fine with that too. I mean, the main concern is
To Tim's point,
Saving
that's
150.
because we're not going to take out debt for a while, so, yeah, the council could choose to put that on the debt at a later date, which makes sense.
Then I'll amend my motion to use the 150,000 to put on the debt.
So we have a motion and a second. Oh, I'm sorry, Tim.
Oh, there's a second out there?
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dean. We don't have a
There's a
second
up
yet.
there, I didn't
Nope.
hear. I would-
Nope, we don't have a second yet.
Okay, I would second that if it's going into the deck. I wasn't gonna do it.
Okay. So we have a motion, now a second, to reduce the library appropriation by $150,000 and use that reduction to apply towards, I guess, what we're gonna borrow, $150,000 less of what we're gonna borrow.
Correct.
Any further discussion? Patrick?
Yeah, that definitely doesn't go far enough. That doesn't even bring us down into the realm of other municipalities our size supporting their, that only drops it by $7.96. That's nothing, so I'm not supporting that.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? All right. Seeing none? Let's vote. Mr. Austin?
No.
Mr. Benjamin?
No,
You said no?
Yep.
Okay.
no,
Mr. Zacher? Mr. Aom? Ms. Evanson?
No.
Mr. Katna?
All right.
Mr. Delaney?
Nay.
And Mr. Bemke?
No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 nays, two yeas and 6 nays. That motion was defeated. Any further discussion, questions on the budget? So seeing, Mr. DeSorsi.
No, this will be quick.
Right.
Just, you all received the council agenda, but that'll have to be amended because we'll have to include 2 resolutions. One adapting the 2022 budget and tax levy, and then also the resolution, it was proposed in the budget that the stormwater fee increased by $2 or $1.92. So those 2 resolutions will be amended and included on Tuesday's council agenda. Just wanted you guys to make aware of that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Delaney or Veneman, anything further?
Yes. I would like to speak more on this library. Anybody that's been following the conversation on the library and has done any type of research can see that the Wisconsin Rapids residents are, per capita, we're paying way more than any other city our size. And most of the times it's by more than double. So even though the appropriation gets lowered by what I think would be the fair amount, they're still getting almost $1.2 million. And if you look at libraries our size, such as the Germantown, their total expenditures are right at $1 million. And if you look at Anago or Kimberly or Rhinelander or Cudahy, they're all under $1 million. Anago is at $614,000. So I don't see why we're taking money out of the general fund to give to them, but yet we're still borrowing money and then passing all that goes with borrowing onto the taxpayers, and then also having the taxpayers be paying $67 per resident here. So I would like to put it back on the table that we reduce the library budget by $809,509.
So we have a motion by Delaney to reduce the library appropriation by $809,509. Is there a second to that motion? Seeing none, that motion fails. Any further discussion or motions on the budget? Oh, this is one of the best budget debates I think I've ever seen in years. So if there's nothing further, there's no further action that needs to be taken, except for, as what Tim said, for Tuesday when the budget will be, the resolutions will be presented. Go ahead, Jake.
I'll just add one thing. I'll present my same motion again next week. Give you all time to think about it, look at the library budget, possibly review that property and finance committee meeting. There is some agreement here that we do need to move in a direction, and I specifically think that particular way of doing it is a good step. If you can look at specifically the library budget and find other areas, I encourage you to and bring that, but I'll be putting this back on the table next week.
Thank you, Jake.
I'd also like to say that my personal thoughts would be honest with you, be somewhere between what Mr. Delaney had just proposed and somewhere between what Mr. Tatnow proposed is what I'm more looking for. So somewhere in the middle of those two numbers would be something I'd still be interested in talking about. If Tuesday, that would be fine.
Can we go through that tonight?
Yeah, I guess if you want to have some further discussion.
I'd like to find out where everybody's at on it and kind of come to an agreement.
My personal feeling was that $150,000 number wasn't quite enough. That's why I seconded the motion, because I seconded the motion to get that thought in process, but I voted no on the actual motion because I didn't think 150 was enough. I didn't think 800 was a little steep at this point for them not being prepared for that at this point, and like especially particularly how we've been talking about working on budget items next year and throughout the time, and we're working on a 23 idea, and some of these things we might be able to find are more cuts like $500 garbage cans, etc. And so my personal feeling would be, I would say I'm in the neighborhood of 300,000.
So is that a motion, Dean?
That's not a motion. I just was asking where the feelings were, and we're still talking about it. That's about what my feeling.
I guess Mr. Austin.
Would it be possible to add an agenda item to potentially bring in Mr. Barnett to kind of answer some questions for us here as far as what removing the funds that we've been kind of talked about would do to the library here for 2022? Is that a possibility?
I think he would happily
Well,
be here.
I think we need to make a designation for it and speak to this topic. So I don't know if that's something that we add an agenda item or we just go with it.
Your mic.
You'll be basically taking up the budget Tuesday, so I guess, I mean, I don't know, unless you're deciding certain department heads or that you want to be there to, because you might be, you know, I guess for those that are being affected, possibly, to give them a heads up. I think that's appropriate. I don't think we need a specific agenda item on it, though, but.
We can definitely have Mr. Burnett here.
Yeah, I would definitely welcome his input.
Go ahead, Sherry.
I just have one question. So the remodeling that's going on there right now, those were funds that, I believe it was 109,000 extra dollars that we gave them, and then that was on top of the money we gave them in their budget for 2021.
Correct.
And then they had, like, was it 1 point some million in grant dollars or
Yeah, they had a match.
donations?
Donation
Thank
ma-
you.
yep.
Charades. So the remodel that's going on there now, I know it is not done. And I know when I asked Andy the other night when we were there about the 130,000 for the library building and grounds and the 69,000 for furnishings and fixtures and those, if that was included in the remodel cost, because, you know, the year before it was $122,000, but that was when the library, I think, was closed. But I was just kind of confused on that. So I guess what my question is, so the money that they're being used right now to remodel the library, that would, none of the 2022 money is to finish that per se. So the money for 2022, the 140,000 for library building and grounds, the 78,000 for furnishings and fixtures is on top of the remodel what's going on right now.
Correct. Okay, so I guess we'll make sure Andy's here, or we never got a second on it. No, I don't even think we had we didn't even have a motion. No. No, but that was just kind of what his brain was chewing on. Okay, so anything further outside of having Andy here on Tuesday? Seeing none, we can go to our last item on the agenda, which is adjournment.
So moved.
A motion by Austin, seconded by Zacher. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any opposed? All right, that motion